Welcome on the podcast, endurance runner Nick Butter, who became the first and only person to run a marathon in every single country across the world. You ran through having food poisoning, all types of weather, 15 war zones, you were mugged twice, attacked by dogs, hit by a car, shot at. Most people would give up if one of those things happened to them, and you carried on.
If I said to you, you battle through all of those and you could do something that nobody's ever done in history. If I knew what I knew now, would I still have done it? I think I would have been too scared.
He's also circumnavigated Britain by running the coastline and doing a double marathon for almost 4 months.
Britain was 100 times harder physically.
He most recently was the star of the Destination X, a BBC travel game show.
Pick up on little clues, and then everybody tries to go after everybody and stabs each other in the back. Go and run, it will change your life. I'm going to run 1,000 marathons in 1,000 days.
I was pretty violently mugged in Nigeria. I had a knife to my throat and a gun to my head. We were dragged out of the vehicle and chucked in a cell. I never felt more terror like it.
Welcome on the podcast, Nick. How are you doing today?
I'm all right, thank you. Thanks very much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So if people don't know who you are, explain to them what you do.
What do? I do lots of running. I suppose you want a little bit more detail than that. Yeah, I'm a runner. I have run. I suppose I'm best known for becoming the first person to run a marathon in every country in the world. As of today, I have run 1,106 marathons.
Wow.
And I am just approaching a big milestone, actually, that I'm very pleased about, which is my 100,000 miles running.
Wow.
Which all time in my life, ever since I was a kid, writing things down in a little book, and I'm really proud of it. It's ultimately been the backbone of my running career. So yeah, in short, that's me. I've 11 records. I do lots of various different bits of adventures. I suppose I started doing adventure running, having done a little bit of time with the Ultra Trail World Tour. That was good fun. So yeah, I'm an adventure runner. I have a charity. I have a business. Business is run weekends. We take people away on running holidays all over the world. Anything from a couple of days in Wales to all the way up to Mongolia or Australia or Sri Lanka or Japan. We have, we're 50 countries all over the world, and that's my passion, just showing people the world through running.
Yes, lots of variety there. So before we get on to all of that, all the world records, all the running, we're going to go right back to the start. So what were you like as a young kid, and what was your childhood dream?
Okay. What was I like? I was outrageously shy. I was cripplingly shy, to the point that I wouldn't play with anybody in the playground. I would hold the dinner lady's hand, and I was kind of scared of the world, to be honest. I think that's the easiest way of describing it. I didn't really enjoy meeting new people. I was just so quiet and cripplingly shy. And I think then as I got older, hormones kicked in, a bit of sport happened, I suppose, and then everything changed. When I was young, my dream was to be an Olympic skier. That was my dream. It had nothing to do with running. It was all about skiing. I was very fortunate enough to then join the Snow Sports England ski team and skied for my country, and I loved it. It was something that I'm incredibly pleased I did, because it opened the door to what sport could be. Now the Olympic dream is very much still a possibility, in the sense that I can't do it skiing, but if one day maybe they introduced ridiculous distances in the Olympics in terms of running, then maybe I would give it a shot. But long and slow running is my specialty, and at the moment that is not an Olympic sport. So yeah, my childhood dream was to be an Olympic skier.
Yeah. So what was that? I was really surprised to find that out when doing research on you, that you were in the British ski team. So how was that like a 14-year-old?
It was wonderful. It was the reality of doing that as a young age. You don't really appreciate what's happening at the time. You're just turning up for training. You're meeting your friends, your family, and your friends, family friends are supporting you, taking you to practice. I learned to ski when I was about 16 months old. My parents took me out
Wow.
and shoved me on some skis, and then after a while, I got the grips of it and got stuck in and did more training, and then I started instructing, and so at the time you don't really realize it, you don't appreciate it, and that's one of those lessons that you realize as you get older. You just have no appreciation whatsoever for the joys of a privileged upbringing, being able to have opportunities. And that's something that I talk about a lot at the moment, and throughout the last decade, I suppose, when I stand up and talk with corporates, it's all about just appreciating what you have and understanding that there's a need for equal opportunity, for access to these kind of things, because some people don't have that. So that was what it was like. I mean, the day to day was either school or training, or both. Whether it be in the UK, doing non-ski related training, or going and getting in the snow and practicing. So yeah.
So, like, what made you stop that? And do you wish that you could carried on that dream, or are you happy where it took you?
Hmm. No, I think the reality is that I had the voice of my mum and dad on my shoulders telling me, Nick, you should probably get a real job at some point. And hearing them say those kind of things, you think, oh, I'm not really ready to do that. I don't know if I want to get a real job. And you don't really think anything of it because getting a job feels so far out of what you enjoy doing. And then, of course, you realize that if you get a job, it means you get money, and if you have money, then you can do things or buy things. And as a teenager, that is quite enticing. And I think that's this weird paradoxical existence of, you go to school, you get grades, you go to university, you get grades, you then go and get a good job, and then you realize that actually none of that is particularly what you want to do, and you just earn the money, so then try and go on holidays. So I was very fortunate, really, that having sport so early on, it gave me that understanding of what I did enjoy, which was not working in an office. But I was lured in by the realities of money, and I went and worked in finance. I worked in a couple of banks, and I earned some decent money, and it was an opportunity to create a real career. The only problem is that career wasn't what my passion was, and it's something that I talk very passionately about now with school kids, especially, is that I go in and talk to kids in schools, and I say, look, kids, if you love to do something, focus on that. It might change over time, but don't just put all of your energy into studying business. If you happen to love playing the piano, play the piano. Like, do what you love, because that is when joy and happiness occurs. I always say, do what you love and the money will come, rather than chase the money, because that's just you might chase the money and you might get the money, but you won't be happy. So that's the reality. So I got a real job, and during that real job, I did exactly that. I realized that I needed to be in sport, and so I started to run, I started to train. I needed to use it as therapy, to be in and out of the office as much as I could to go and train, whether it be in the gym or whether it be out running. And that was really the birth of my running life and career. Is it was an escape from the office.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect way of thinking that you went on to realize. So, what was that journey through, like, your dreams and your dream jobs, from being the childhood dream of being an Olympic skier, and what was your dreams during, like, the time that you were in finance, and then coming out at the back end of that?
Yeah, I think I realised that the dream was about having a lifestyle that wasn't dictated by earning money. It was dictated by having the freedom to do what you enjoyed, and that, I think, should be most people's dream early on in life, is to find something that you can do. What was the philosopher Confucius said? If you find a job, find something that you enjoy, find a job that you enjoy, and you'll never work a day in your life, something like that. And that's essentially what my dream was. It was to find something, a way out of earning money, because if you have a job, it gives you money, but then it doesn't give you the joy. So you have to go and find that joy, and running was that joy. And then it was a case of the dream was working out how I would turn that into a career. And as you probably know, and as many people listening to this will probably know, you don't really make much money by being a runner. Not probably enough to get by, really. It's just a case of you need to work out how that works. So I understood sponsorship, I understood brand partnerships, I understood speaking events, I understood writing books. And so all of that started to come, and I realized that actually I could have a career that, yes, it's not going to be as much money as working in the bank, but it would mean that I have freedom. It means I have my life outdoors. I'm spending so much more time outdoors. And it seemed like the right path to go down.
Yeah. So how was the school process for you? What was some of your favorite subjects, and then how do you think that led you into finance? Was it just that money aspect, or did you have a somewhat interest in that?
I would say absolutely not. No, absolutely no interest in finance or economics or maths. I was not bad at maths. Didn't find it that difficult. I was dyslexic as well. I was really dyslexic, so struggling to read and write as a kid was really challenging. And I think the realization that you could work really hard at something to then be better at it and come out the other side, that's what it was all about for me. School was a place to be with friends, and it was a place where I was having to work harder than anybody that was around me. I felt like I was working 5 times as hard. And so actually at the time that felt quite cruel. It felt like, hang on a minute, why am I having to work extra hard because I can't write my own name properly or spell my own name? And then I realized now, in hindsight, it gave me this work ethic of work harder. And so there was no topic, there was no. I remember having an argument with my English teacher because I didn't realize why we were learning, didn't understand why we were learning Shakespeare. And of course, I understand now that Shakespeare is a fundamental, and yet I also still entirely disagree with the fact that it should be taught. I think we should be talking about real things. You leave school nowadays without having any understanding of what a mortgage is, or how to make money passively. You don't actually learn stuff that matters in the day, in today's world. So I really struggle with that, and I get on my high horse a little bit about talking about how school should be. So no topics I particularly enjoyed or hated. It was a case of get through school and then go and ski. That was everything.
But I suppose you're glad for that experience because it made you the person you are, and it made you be able to be in the right mindset to get these world records, to do this ultra running.
That's true. That's true. I think it gave me the work ethic. I think school gave me that energy. School gave me I can work hard and I can achieve, even though I'm behind. It's like the hare and the tortoise. I very much felt like the tortoise at school. I was always behind, but I just kept working harder and harder and harder and harder. And then all of a sudden I overtook the hare. And that's definitely given me a subconscious work ethic that I'm now able to use. Absolutely.
Yeah. So then obviously you went into banking, as you discussed before, and found running as an escape. So what was it like when you really found your joy of running, and how long did that take to become more than just a hobby and become the escape that you needed from being in the finance world?
Yeah, it's a good point. I suppose because when you start doing a bit of running to escape the office, there's no part of you that really thinks, oh, well, this will be a career. You just go, I'm just going to lose some weight. I'm going to get fitter. I mean, I wasn't particularly chunky. I was quite scrawny, but you still feel like, running can be better for your fitness. You can enjoy that sort of thing. And so I would just run to work, from work, at my lunch break. And obviously working in finance, you have to work particularly hard and particularly long hours. And so it was a case of just using any time I could to get outside. And the process was slow. It was very slow. I entered a few little races, 10K, half marathon, started to run. And I enjoyed it, but I never thought that it could be any more than it was. And so I continued to run and train and go to the gym and run with my friends. And from there, I started to get some attention from some brands when I started to do well in races, and they said, "Oh, well, would you like to enter this race for free? Would you like to wear this pair of socks?" And then I had an opportunity further down the line with Red Bull to go and run a race series in the Caribbean. And at the time, it was one of those moments of, getting an email and a phone call from Red Bull when you're working in finance, and they say to you, "We've seen you, we like what you're doing, we want you to come and run with us." That was one of those moments where you kind of go, "Oh, okay, I'm probably quite good at this." And I didn't really realize it. I had no idea. And annoyingly, I said no to that offer. I said no to
Wow.
Red Bull because I had a job, I had a career, I
Yeah.
had I had an income, I had a mortgage to pay. I can't just up and leave my very well-paid job for to go jog. And I said no, and I think that was probably the cliff. That was the moment where I thought, okay, I can change something here. I can train a little bit harder, and I'll have an opportunity like that again. And eventually, I was sponsored by Red Bull, and I got out of the bank, but it wasn't an easy, instant process.
Yeah, and did all of that sponsorship, all the things with Red Bull, come from just building up? So, like as you said, starting with 10K races,
Yeah,
building up. I did Great North Run last year for the first time. That was like the first time
well done.
I've properly started running. So I'm doing it again this year. So, like, people would think what you do is impossible, some people say. Some people look at the distances that you
Mm.
run and be like, what, how?
Mhm.
But was that just a
Yeah,
slow build from distance to distance to distance?
it's a very good point. And I think I am just a normal person, just like everybody else on the planet. Whether you're a member of the royal family, whether you're a Hollywood celebrity, or whether you're somebody that is struggling to get by, you I think the perception of social media, of mainstream media, of society is that, I have to be different in some way. I have to be special. I have to. The only way that it's been made possible is to keep doing it and to keep practicing it and to not giving up. Um, and you have to, I think there's an element of luck there. You have to kind of position yourself and take risks. You have to be able to say, okay, well, I've got that opportunity. I'm going to say yes to it. I think saying yes to things and meeting new people and building networks is a real fundamental way of understanding where you can go and being successful. Um, I'll use an analogy of building a house. If you look at a wonderful, let's think of like the Taj Mahal. A famous, beautiful, huge building that is just a series of tiny, tiny little bits of detail that have taken time to build. And all of a sudden you get to that point. And that's exactly the same with me, with the amount of running I've done or the amount of records I've got is just a lot of, I mean, marathon says it itself, one step at a time, 42,000 steps sometimes, 42-kilometer race. It's just one step after another. And that's exactly the same for all those hundred thousands of miles I've run, for all of the opportunities with brands, for all of the photo shoots, for all of the occasions where I've been approached and I said yes, that gave me an opportunity to then step into it. And I'm also very aware that you have to realize that you have to keep giving effort. You can't just stop. And it's the same now. You have never reached the top. Certainly, I think in an athlete's mindset, you've never reached the top. Because if you win one gold Olympic medal, you want another one. You want another one. And then you want to be the one that's got the most. And maybe that's the top. I don't know. I've not got them. It's I think it's an addictive thing to be pushing. So yeah, that's my perspective on that.
Yeah, and you talk about the Red Bulls sponsorship, them calling you up. But what was that final thing that made you make the leap and leave banking behind? And what was the plan behind that, and the
Yeah,
plan for the year, 2 years ahead afterwards?
yeah. So this was, I suppose, the real cliff edge. I've been a competitive runner, been running, stayed in the bank, And then I decided to step away from competitive running and go and do some adventures. And ultimately, this adventure was born out of a conversation with a wonderful man called Kevin, who I met in the Sahara Desert. This was one of the Ultra Trail World Tours events, which is known as Marathon des Sables, MDS. This was in the desert. There was about 1,000 people taking part, and I wanted to finish pretty strong. If anybody doesn't know this race, it's a 7-day race in the desert. You stay in these camel hair bivouacs, beautiful blanket of stars overhead. It's 50 degrees. You got 1,000 strangers in the desert, all suffering every day. Marathon day 1, marathon day 2, double marathon day 3, day off day 4, marathon finish. It's a hard slog in the desert. And so I was in a tent with 8 people, including me. And apart from my coach, they were all strangers, and we just got chatting. And to the point that I'm still friendly with all of them to this day. And this was a long time ago. And I met a guy called Kev, and he was 49 at the time. And he was running with me, and we got chatting and in the evening in the tent, and he dropped the bombshell on me that he had terminal prostate cancer and was given only 2 years to live. His prognosis was 2 years. He probably wasn't going to get to see his 9-year-old boy get to 11. And he was incredibly sad, and yet there was this weird disconnect between him and the reality that he was smiling and joyous and a really bubbly chap. And I realized that he was just following his dream. He was using his time as much as he could to do what he loved and to obviously raise some money for Prostate Cancer UK, the charity that's helping fight prostate cancer. And I went away from that desert with the words that he said to me, and they've never left me, which is, Nick, don't wait for a diagnosis. Don't wait for something terrible to happen to you until you make a decision to live your life. And I kind of vaguely understood what he meant. And now I really understand what he meant. He was saying to me, look, you should do anything. You can do anything in your world if you want to. You just have to make time for it. You have to believe it enough, and you have to continue to grab hold of it for long enough to make it achievable. And at the time, I already thought that I was living a pretty good life. I was running out in the desert. I had a good job. And I said, and he said, yeah, but what would you do if you could do anything? And I realized that I didn't know what that was. And it was quite embarrassing when somebody's dying and they ask you that, because I have all the time in the world and he doesn't.
Yeah.
Long story short, I got back, I had a meal with him and his family, and I had a few more thoughts afterwards. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something to raise money for Prostate Cancer UK. Maybe a run somewhere. And then I just Googled it. I just Googled, has anybody run a marathon in every country in the world? And nobody had. And I didn't know why. And I now know why. It's very expensive. It's very difficult. We've put people on the moon. Why can this not happen? I now know why. It's really tough. But I sat my parents down and I said, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to run a marathon in every country in the world. And my mum said, how many countries are there? And I said, I don't know. I just knew that I wanted to do this project. And from that point on, I left work and made a plan. And that plan was 2 years in the making. It was 2 years of me working out how to do this mission. Skip ahead those 2 years, I was eventually at the start line of doing this mad mission, and I'd kind of left my career behind, and I was to run around the world.
Yeah, so during those 2 years, what was your sole focus just on this mission, and how did you support yourself during those 2 years with leaving your job and not having started that main mission yet?
Yeah, it was challenging because a big part of the trip was to raise awareness and some cash for the charity, but equally you have to raise money yourself through sponsorship and private donations to you in order to do the trip, because if you don't do the trip you can't raise the money. And so it was tough. I survived off money that I had, off family, off friends, off sponsors, and I just got by, really. I was okay at that point, and I realized that it was going to be a slog. Every single day was sending an email asking for sponsorship, and then if I was very lucky, they might get back to me and say no. Otherwise, they would just ignore me entirely. and you just have to do that over and over and over and over again. And so that was tough. Those 2 years of working out all of the logistics, what I had to do to get to every place, the logistics with passports. You can see behind me there some of my passports that I used around the world. And we budgeted £100,000. We thought I'd need about 120 flights, and maybe I'd need about 3 passports to kind of make the 2-year project work. What actually happened was I needed 455 flights. We spent over £1 million,
Wow.
and I needed 9 passports, not 3. So, as you can imagine, the reality of this trip was chaotic. A lot went wrong. And beforehand, a lot went wrong. Before the start line, 2 years of prep behind the laptop, speaking to people, planning it, and training. I had to do a bit of training as well. I was going to go and do 3 marathons every week all over the world in different temperatures. And there was a lot of weight on my shoulders at that point because I'd committed. And I think that's another element, and I'm sure we'll discuss it, but there's this whole concept of resilience. But I actually think that if you're properly motivated, there's not that much resilience required. You just do it because you want it enough. And I do think that's different. I think there's stubbornness, I think there's resilience, and I think there's wanting it enough. And I definitely fall into the last camp.
Yeah, and talking about thinking in your mental state, how did you mentally prepare for this challenge? When you actually realized it was coming closer, it was in the coming months, how was that?
Yeah.
Because when you're traveling around the world, environments, everything is unfamiliar, from food to weather to terrain that you would be running on. So how was that mental preparation like?
I think there's something to be said for naivety. I think there's something to be said for naivety because it's very easy to assume that I went through all of these mental preparations and I would, all of it happened ahead of time. That's not the case. I went into it very naive, if I knew what I knew now, would I still have done it? I think I would have been too scared. I think I would have doubted because of the realities of all of the obstacles we had to overcome. It looks like on paper that it's just too difficult to do. And fortunately, there was an element of naivety where I didn't know any of that. And so I remember very distinctly the mental element, the me talking to myself and going, you know what, Nick, you've got to pull yourself together. This is going to be, this is going to be intense. That was on Marathon 1, Country 1 in Toronto. Day 2 of the challenge. It was January the 6th. It was very cold, minus 25 degrees C in Toronto, Canada. And I remember running, thinking to myself, what have you done? What have you got yourself into? You've got to do this in every country in the world until you finished. And we didn't really know how long it was going to take at the time. We didn't know how much it was going to cost. And it was only then really that I gave myself a mental talking to. And then it was a case that it started, so I'll finish. That's the rule of endurance, right? You keep going until it's done.
Yeah, and you talk about the difficulties during that mission. You ran through having food poisoning, all types of weather, 15 war zones. You were mugged twice, attacked by dogs, hit by a car, shot at. Most people would give up if one of those things happened to them. And you carried on. How did that happen?
Yeah, it's a good point. There was a lot of things that did go wrong. I think being shot at, being attacked by the dogs, and there's so many things like that you had a heart attack as well. All of those things that you mentioned, they are challenging. However, if I said to you, you battle through all of those, and you could do something that nobody's ever done in history, you could battle through them, and potentially it means you don't actually have to go back to your real job afterwards. You could actually go and have a career. Then you're motivated. You want it enough. I wasn't having to be particularly resilient at any point. I was just wanting to be there. And I think that is the difference between and I talk to lots of people that are training for marathons, and I think sometimes they have low motivation to get out and train. And the reality is that there's this boom that we're having at the moment where it's fashionable to run a marathon. Everybody's doing it. And I think some people are then going out and running a marathon for the wrong reasons. They don't particularly want to do it. And therefore the training is hard because you don't want to be doing it. If you want to do it, and this is what I say, I'm so outrageously fortunate that I love running. I love running for me. I don't post on Strava. I mean, I post on Strava when I do my expeditions, but of all of my stuff, it just stays on my Garmin, and it's for me because I love to do it for me. And so I think there's another side of it, which is very, very true. I have this one little life, and Kev has a life that is going to be cut short because of his cancer. And so I have this opportunity to go and do all of this fun stuff. And yes, it's hard, but gosh, the alternative is so much worse. And so I was very motivated by that and having that philosophy. And I feel like most people in the world don't really understand or get given that kind of ultimatum of, okay, you're dying, do something about it, use your time wisely. Whereas Kev gave me this wonderful gift, which is that I didn't have to be given a horrible diagnosis, but actually he's given me that philosophy without it. And so I just absolutely use all of my days. I hope I do. Touch wood, I do. I use all of my days just doing what I enjoy, and I'm very, very lucky to do that. So the answer is I wanted it enough. That's why I kept going.
Yeah. And what country surprised you most during that journey?
I think the surprising countries, the realities of every country I went to, there was a surprise. Everyone has the preconceived ideas. If I say to you, Afghanistan, Israel, America, Wales, Scotland, well, if I say anywhere, you will have a set of preconceived ideas. Whether they are positive or negative, you will have some form of an idea about a place. But the reality is that if I say Afghanistan to you, you probably have some ideas about war, but you've never been there. And so if you've never been there, how do you know? And that's the reality that I experienced throughout the world. Everywhere I went, I thought, oh, Bahamas, it's going to be lovely and sunny. It rained. I went to Syria. I thought Syria is going to be a little bit scary. It wasn't. I was joined by the female national football team, and we ran a marathon together. It was spectacular. It was, yes, that was highly. It was so different to what you see on the news because I was in a snapshot of time, so I was only there for a few days at a time, and I was also living in this bubble where you're seeing the world through a finite lens, and at a point in time in history that was particularly interesting. So I feel very lucky, very, very lucky to have done that. I would say every single country has been surprising for one reason or another, for good or for bad. The preconceived ideas that we have, I would urge everybody to not see the world through their screens. If you want to make judgment about a place, go and see it for yourself, because otherwise you just don't know what it's really like. And if I see something on telly or I'll be watching a film and I'll go, oh, I ran down that road, and and the road in the film might be portrayed as in one way when actually the reality is entirely different.
Yeah.
Because even if you think about the way that the news works, news is given to us most of the time when bad things happen.
Yeah.
And so we perceive the world through those bad things, but most of the time they're not happening. And so that's why the world, I think, is this much more beautiful, much more together, much more comforted, much more friendly place than we actually think, because we always get told of the bad stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like the mission really changed like your overall view on the world, but also how logistically was it like with more like restricted countries such as North Korea, but like logistically getting into them and doing the marathon. How was all that like?
Yeah, it was. It was. It was challenging. The logistics was the most difficult part of the whole trip. I fortunately had a great team. My dad and my mum and my brother, they were all very heavily involved as well. And the team that we had, it was about 19 of us in total. I mean, I travelled on my own, but there was this wonderful team of people that made everything possible. Without exaggerating, the logistics were so complicated to the point that we had thousands of lines on spreadsheets. We would have to juggle passports from one place to the next. If I just explain the passport concept for a second, let's say I have three passports, and you're legally allowed to travel with three passports. And so one of those passports, I have to send that passport off to Senegal. Senegal, if you want a visa to get into the country in Western Africa, Senegal, you have to go and get a permission. And that passport has to go to Paris because that's where the office is to get your approval. So that passport goes to Paris to get the accreditation to say you can go to the country, the visa. But that visa is only valid for a number of months. So you have to then make sure that you get that passport back and then go into that country. Meanwhile, I'm in another country that requires a visa in another passport. I'm in that country running around, and then I get on a plane and go to another country. But that other country doesn't like the country I've just been to, and so won't let me in if I have a passport stamp from that country. And so all of a sudden I need another passport. And if that's the case, I need to go and get my passport back from the one in Senegal so that I can come into this country. There's this huge, as you can imagine, this is just one scenario, but as soon as you put every country in there, and then you put the time limits, and then you put the fact that airlines will go bust, I might not make a flight on time, a flight might be cancelled, and all of a sudden, the carefully orchestrated plan that means I have visas in the right time goes out the window. And then all the money that you spend on the visas also goes out the window, so you need more money to find the right visas, replan the route for then it to only go wrong again. That was essentially the 2 years. There was about 60 flights that that didn't happen for one reason or another. There were airlines that went bust. There was visas refused. There was passports that had the wrong stamps. I was literally turning up to airports not knowing which country I was in because I was too tired. It was incredibly complicated. Imagine being asked by an immigration officer, where did you fly from? And I say, I have no idea. I'm literally too tired. And then they say, well, where are you staying? And I have no idea because I don't even know what country I'm in. That's my life.
So like, what was the biggest, obviously the whole mission was a logistical nightmare, but what was the single like logistical nightmare experience that you can remember, like one specific day, period of time?
Okay, good point. So one point in time. I mean, there were so many of them. One was quite challenging. Yeah, there really were so many. There's two that come to mind. One was getting access into Iran. Iran eventually gave me, after many, many attempts, Iran gave me a 12-hour visa.
Wow.
And that was to the island of Kish instead of the mainland, because I'd been to other countries that they didn't like, and they thought I might have been a spy. And so therefore, we don't want you in our country. So they allowed me a 12-hour visa. I ran overnight. And that was ticked off. It was very challenging because it thought it was going to derail the mission completely. And you can't finish a trip and say I ran a marathon in every country in the world apart from one. That doesn't quite have the same ring to it, does it? You've got to do all or nothing. That's me, by the way. I'm very much all or nothing. And the other time was in Syria, going into Syria, getting access into Syria. I was due to be picked up by a driver. And very sadly, that driver a few days before was shot and killed on the journey that I was supposed to be going with him. But we then had to make a decision around, well, do we find another driver? Is it safe to go in? Once we're there, is that going to be okay? Et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, we did find another driver, and I was safe enough. I was in the boot of the car for a little while. flaming roadblocks and all sorts of stuff like that. We had bullets hit the car. It was scary, but it was one of those, if you don't do it now, you have to do it later, and it might be worse later.
Yeah.
So we made that decision. There was a lot of, talk about, I think people think that the trip was tiring because of the physical exertion. The reality was that it was tiring because you have to make all the decisions yourself. If I say to you, if you go and run out the door now, every time you get to a junction, you have to make a decision whether you go left or right. I have to do that with all my marathons. I also have to do that with all the logistics. And I also have to do that with my own safety. If I go down this road here, is there going to be a dog? And is that dog going to bite me? Is there going to be a human that will have a knife or a gun? And you have to do that over and over again and keep making, like when you're playing a video game, you have to keep making those right decisions without losing a life. And in a video game, you can get away with it, not so much when it's real life. So there was a lot of that mental fatigue.
Yeah, and you talk about doing this mission to live life to your fullest, but how do you balance that with being safe and surviving this mission and not dying?
That's a very good point. I have a bit of a philosophy there that, I'm not callous in my life. I want to live a long life. It's the same thing that Alex Honnold says, the brilliant climber that I'm a very big fan of, have been for a long time. He says, he's a free solo climber, right? And he talks about wanting to prolong his life as much as possible, but not to the extent that he's not going to do what he loves. And it's the same with me. I want to prolong my life as much as possible, but I also want to achieve this mission. And so that's exactly what I did. In situations where I think this is getting too much, it's very easy to get scared and go, right, no, it's not happening. Life is more important. And of course, life is more important. But I've already done all of the work. I've been as safe as I can be. I've got the security team. I've got my tracker. I've got my protocols set up, etc., etc., etc. Every country before I started the trip, we marked them as red, amber, or green. So red countries, I'd have to check in every 2 hours. Amber countries, I'd have to check in twice a day. And green countries, I didn't need to check in at all. So we did some safety stuff beforehand. And it was a case of making those decisions. And ultimately, I personally, as selfishly as it is, I'm okay with I'm okay with dying doing something I love, frankly. Because if it's doing something I love, I'd much rather that. I'm still going to try my hardest not to die. They can both coexist.
Yeah, and what was the most dangerous situation you felt like you put yourself in?
There's a few dangerous positions. I'd say, I was pretty violently mugged in Nigeria. I had a knife to my throat and a gun to my head. That was terrifying, but equally, I understood a very valuable lesson that day, which was, I always thought I would just run away in those situations, but you can't, because the physicality of the situation and the where I was in this huge, busy, bustling market. And these 5 guys had pushed me to the floor and kicked me and had basically just wanted to take all of my belongings. And the reality is, in order to not get shot or stabbed, you give them all of your belongings. It's a very classic mugging, but therefore you realize that you can get out of this dangerous situation by simply relinquishing things that are just material items. And of course, you don't want that and you feel aggrieved by it, but it still means it kept you safe. So that was scary. The heart attack is definitely one. That was in Samoa. I really struggled there. But following that, I would say the one thing that made my heart really go, apart from the heart attack, was in Yemen. We went over the border in Yemen, and turns out the guy that we'd hired to take me into the country was smuggling drugs and counterfeit perfume and goods, and we got we were dragged out of the vehicle and chucked in a cell. Very, very aggressive, barky dogs, lots of guns, lots of people with some semi-automatics. And I never felt more terror like it. And it wasn't for being hurt or killed. It was for the fact that I could just be locked up and abandoned.
Yeah.
Because there was no comms, there was no British embassy there. There's no there's no way of knowing where I was, because I was just on my own at that point, with the driver. So that was terrifying. I think that takes it, to be honest. I think that was the most scary.
Yeah, I can imagine. I don't think anyone could even picture what that would have been like. And you mentioned there that you suffered a heart attack on your 182nd marathon. And then you ran another marathon 2 days later. So what was that experience, and how
Mm.
did you carry on after such a big, like, physical event like that?
Mm. Um, I'm gonna play the naivety card again. And I think if you really know the facts of it, if you really know the dangers, I think the sensible element comes into it, and you go, "Well, maybe not." But there's definitely I remember feeling like I don't want to really know too much about this, because it's just going to scare me, and it means that I might make a decision not to carry on. So I kind of shielded myself and sheltered myself from it. And I mean, I have a heart condition anyway, so the reality is that life could end just like that. I mean, just like anybody, really. We forget that. That's the reality of life, is that we never really know when our time's up. And it's not morbid. I don't think that's morbid. I think that's something that we should all think about more, because it will actually motivate us correctly. And so, I was so close. 182nd. Was it 100? Is that what you said? I can't even remember what the number
Yeah,
was.
182nd.
182nd country. And so therefore I was very close, the number being 196 to finish it off. I think maybe had that happened in marathon 5, then I probably would have maybe stopped and started again. But I was so far in that it wasn't. I didn't feel pressure to carry on. I just wanted to carry on, because it's so worth doing. And we're raising loads of money, and we were nearly coming to the end of this amazing journey. Don't get me wrong. There's many times when I just wanted to stay in bed because I was so exhausted, but I didn't want to stay in bed more than I wanted to do the mission. So
Yeah, and was there any times that you were so close to not carrying on with this mission and heading home?
there was a couple of instances where I had to return home for medical stuff for a short period. I had a very bad tooth infection, which we were worried was going to, because obviously if you have an infection in your face, it means then it's very close to the brain. And we were worried that something would happen like that. So it was quite a bad infection. I had to go and get that seen to. And it happened to coincide with a trip back to the UK to pick up a new passport, because, as I said, passports were constantly being picked up. So that was one of those times. I truly never wanted to stop. Many times I wanted to pause. I wanted just to go, I need to put my feet up now. I need to stay in bed for a few days. There was one particular moment, which was in Bangladesh, and I had food poisoning. I had food poisoning, a kidney infection, and I was peeing blood, and I was rough. My body was ruined. And I remember thinking, I do not want to run in 40 degrees in huge humidity. And there was a lovely gaggle of Bangladeshi guys in the hotel reception that I was staying in, and they were all waiting for me. And I remember waking up thinking, "Oh no, I don't want to do this today." I feel imagine having food poisoning and then a kidney infection and then you're peeing blood. You feel awful, and the thought of going out and running for 4 or 5 hours in the heat is it's just not on. But ultimately, I don't know why really, but I got out of bed and I went down. I got my gear on. I went down to reception. They all greeted me with huge back slaps on the back, which were outrageously painful because I had a kidney infection. But I ran that marathon. I threw up, I think, 25 times in about 26 miles, because my body was just saying stop, 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 stop. And I didn't stop. I carried on and I got it done. And it meant that I didn't have to return to the country later. It meant that I could stick with this plan. And the reality, I think, is that I've said it before, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to finish the mission. And so therefore I got out of bed, even though it felt horrendous.
Yeah, and through all of this, like, that desire to want to finish this mission must have been deep within you to carry on
It was
through
very deep
all
within me.
these.
Yeah, it was very deep within me, and I think the reality is psychologically, having been asked this question a lot, you reflect on it and you think, well, why? Why do I want this much? And I think it comes down to wanting validation, whether it's from your parents, your mum or your dad. You want to prove something, and at the time, you don't. It's not a conscious thought. You're not doing it for that. But everybody's got their desires. Everybody's got their human reasons for doing stuff.
I hope you're enjoying the interview so far. I do have lots more exciting guests for this year lined up, so please do subscribe. We're also trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so please do if you can. But now it's time to get back to the interview. Not only did you run 196 marathons in that challenge over 22 months, you ran 211 to future-proof your record. And that really shows, going back to that desire to want this record and continue to want it to be held. Like, what was behind that decision, and how did you pick those extra places to run?
Yeah. So the reality with this, it's a good question, because it's disputed, how many countries there are. There are, in my opinion, 196 countries and about 72 territories, maybe 71. And obviously things change all the time. Geography, politics, tectonic plates, they all have a say in what's a country, what isn't. The official number is about 193 countries, and then there's a couple to add in there as potentials. So we made sure that Guinness World Records said 196 countries. So we said, yeah, we agree with you. And that was the individual sovereign states. But I also, if I'm going to go and run around the world, I also wanted to do the World Marathon Majors. And so running those was important, and there's 6 of them. So you add those on. And then you also add all of the countries that are potentially going to be countries. So then you future-proofed the record, because obviously once I've done it, I'm not going to go and do it all again, plus another one. So I figure, or maybe I will do it all again, you never know. I thought, well, here we go, let's add a few on. So there's the easiest example I use is Beijing and Hong Kong. Hong Kong is trying to be independent. It isn't at the moment. It's China, and therefore, if it ever is, I've also ran in Hong Kong as well as Beijing. So that gives you an idea of why. And actually, there was a few more, like you said. There was a lot of 211. There's a lot of options there to go and run extra ones. And the reality being is there's a lot of geography involved with flights, logistics, with not being able to leave a certain Pacific Ocean island because you then had to go to another place, and the plane's only landing in 4 days' time. So if I'm there, I may as well go to somewhere and do another one just in case. So there was a little bit of both. Because by that point, the physicality of it wasn't that challenging, because you get your body just gets into a rhythm. It was difficult, but it wasn't what everybody deems as this horrendous marathon effort. It was more just being able to, the careful balance of eating, sleeping, washing, charging stuff, getting in a taxi to the airport, waiting in the airport, not sleeping too much that you miss your flight. Very proud that I've never missed a flight on that trip. And I think that's my perspective on that.
Yeah, and what was your last marathon? And when you finished that, how was that feeling, knowing that you had done this incredible journey? And then how was the feeling when you got presented with the Guinness World Record, saying that you're the first and only man ever to run a marathon in every country in the world?
Yeah, the reality is that finishing this trip was very strange. It's not what people expected, because it's not this huge fanfare of, oh my God, I finished it, amazing. It was quite sad, because I've all of us literally run out of countries, and I did this thing and I finished it, but my body was in such a rhythm that it felt like, well, okay, I've done this one, where's the next one? So my last official country was Greece. I ran in Athens, and Athens is the home, if anybody doesn't know, to the marathon. There's a place called Marathon, and you run from Marathon to Athens. And going back to the origins of why we call a marathon is because a Roman soldier ran from Marathon through to Athens to announce that they had won. And he got over the line and he shouted that the victory had been made, which is the word Nike, ironically, in Greek. And I'm a big fan of that story because that's where the marathon came from, because very sadly he then dropped dead having announced that the victory had been held. And so therefore this distance for a soldier was really challenging. And then it became this modern element where 26.2 miles or 42.195k is a marathon. So and then post trip it takes a very long time to get everything accredited. You have to do your logbook. It took about a year, 14, 15 months of effort to do that. And of course we had a party. COVID happened. We had a meal. I wrote a book. The trip finished in one sense, and I finished it. I wasn't having to run a marathon every few days, but the journey continued, and I'm still speaking to you now, 7 years later. And so therefore actually it's really still relevant. The journey's never really ended.
Yeah, so after the actual running aspect of the mission finished, did you feel a loss of purpose? Like gold medalists talk about the gold medal syndrome, when they've been for years and years that you were searching to do this mission, 2 years in planning, 22 months actually doing it, then to finish it. Like, how was the mental state of you afterwards? And were you straight on to searching for that next challenge?
Yeah, it's interesting. I again, a good question. I was expecting to feel quite a lot of loss, and I did in the short term, but I was absolutely swept up into this whirlwind of media and press, and going and sitting on the big red sofa on BBC Breakfast and filming things and being approached by brands and doing newspapers and writing the book. I was so caught up. And actually, that's a very good point. The writing process, it made me relive everything. I could read my journals, I could read my Instagram posts, I could look through all my photos and videos. And so I was reliving it again. The other thing that happened, which was so distinct, was COVID. And so even if I wanted to do stuff, the whole world, for the first time in our lifetimes and in recent history, nobody could do anything. We were absolutely all locked down. And therefore I was in the same boat as everybody else. So it kind of came at this prime time where I'd been traveling so much, but now I have to stop. Rather than loads of other people are traveling, I still want to keep traveling because we couldn't. But during that process, between the two lockdowns, that's when I dreamt up another project because I got itchy feet. I needed to do more. And I think that's the answer, is fill your time with doing what you love. And I've said that from the very beginning of this podcast episode. And so I did. And I came up with a plan to run 100 marathons in 100 days from the north to the south of Italy. And that's exactly what we did. We started in the north of Italy. This was after COVID 1, so what I would call COVID 1 and COVID 2. Remember when we thought it was all gone away and it hadn't? Everything was opened up, and then we started running, and I finished that trip 100 marathons later, bottom of Sicily, on Christmas Eve, and all of a sudden COVID was coming back. And everything was locked down, and we made a mad dash for it, and we drove back up to the mountains and got locked down in the mountains in France. And I remember thinking, gosh, I've been so lucky twice. I've been able to finish the whole world, and then COVID happened. And now I've just another trip just in those finite amount of days between the country unlocking and then locking again. So, yeah, very lucky.
Yeah, and how was that mission like compared with the Running the World mission? Because I suppose it's more physically intense running a marathon every single day. So how was that in coping with the challenges of that compared with your past mission?
Yeah, that's a good point. Good question. It was Um, Logistically, it had its challenges because although I wasn't going to different countries, living out of a van with my partner at the time and my dog, and it was really difficult. And I wrote about it in my book because living out of a van and van life is all very popular. And I lived in a van for nearly 5 years, 4 and a bit years. I absolutely loved it. But the reality is you can't really wash. You're going to be woken up in the night if you park somewhere you shouldn't. You might get lost. You might have van troubles on the way. So there's loads of logistics. It was physically much more demanding, and yet I got into my rhythm even quicker because all of a sudden the body knew what it was doing. I ate about 140 pizzas in 100 days because I was I was in Italy, great food, running every day, and I just loved it. I wake up super early, get the marathon done, then have the afternoon off. It was physically demanding, but fine. However, then once I finished that trip, I then went and did another trip, which was running around Britain. This was running 2 marathons every day for 100 days, which turned into 4 months. 2 marathons every day for 4 months, more or less. That is very challenging. If you think about the numbers, 196 marathons in 2 years. I then went and did 200 marathons in 4 months. That is more challenging. 12 hours a day, every day, without the opportunity to have a break. And it really taught me, again, I wanted it enough, so I carried on doing it. But it really did teach me the power of the mind through that process, because physically I was done. I was so exhausted. Running on the coast path around the whole of Britain, England, Scotland, Wales, is very, very hilly. I mean, I live in Cornwall and I know it's hilly, but when you go and run every meter a bit, it's it really broke me.
Yeah, and like in between those bigger missions, as you've said, you've also ran from London to Paris in just 38 hours and 51 minutes, running 850 kilometers in 9 days and 6 hours on a famous pilgrimage trail in North Spain, running the Arctic Circle, completing a circumnavigation of Bali. So what has been your favorite challenge so far outside of those
the big 3
challenges?
That's a really good one. You know what? I'm going to say it's the Camino. It's the Santiago de Compostela Camino. This is the famous pilgrimage in northern Spain. Anybody that's listening to this podcast episode, if you haven't done this, whether you're a runner or not, because it's a trek, it's a famous 33-day walk. It is absolutely stunning. It is. You start in a little village called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in the southwest region of France, just before you get to the Pyrenees, kind of on the base of the Pyrenees on the French side. And you go up and over. And then traditionally, if you walk it, it takes 33 days. I think I did it in 9 running. And it was so remarkable. I took nothing with me. I started with a bag. I then eventually sent that bag home, which I never actually made it home, to the point that all of the journey was me with a bum bag, my passport, a phone charger and adapter, my phone, and some sun cream. And just there was no other clothes, no nothing. And because it was so hot, it was scorching sun every day, and I was just running through these beautiful trails. You stay in these albergues. It's actually a trip that we do with a part of the trip we do with run weekends now. We go from we go from Santiago to Murcia on the coast for Finisterre, and it's the community spirit. Every day, you just, whenever you want to stop, there is an albergue. There's essentially this dorm room, and it's like €5 or €8, and you have a bed and you have a shower, and you lie around in the sun until you go to bed and have a dinner at night, and you eat communally, and then you do it again the next day. It was just one. I've made some really good friends from that trip. And in fact, Laura, who is a member of our team at Run Weekends, she went and ran it and broke the record. Not so recently, not so long ago. Sorry, she ran it as well, and she came back raving about it and said exactly the same as I did. It was just one of the most amazing trips. So I can strongly recommend that.
Yeah, and as you said before, in 2021, you took on another massive challenge, running the coast of Britain on foot, doing a double marathon per day for 4 months. So what What was the thinking behind that challenge, and where did it come from?
The thinking behind the challenge was all about the returning Britain to kind of unlocking Britain, put it like that. It was April the 15th that the Prime Minister stood up and said, "We have unlocked Britain, you can go and have a life again." And in those few weeks leading up to it, because we felt like that was going to happen, I eventually then started the trip on the 17th of April. And this was about reconnecting with people, because we've been running on our own. We were allowed to do exercise outside, but we weren't allowed to do it with people. And the whole country, the whole world had suffered. And so this was about celebrating unity, about togetherness, running as a group, as one. And then it was also about exploring Britain. I ran around the entire world, and yet I hadn't seen the coastline of my own island yet. And I felt kind of silly. So I thought, I really need to go and do this. Having done it, being able to say I've been to every beach in Britain is astonishing. And I can promise you there are some beaches in Britain that you would not believe. They would rival one of the most beautiful beaches anywhere in the world. Northwest Scotland, for example, it's cold, but it's absolutely beautiful. Like white sandy beaches, blue water, and obviously you wouldn't know it was there because we all go to Spain.
Yeah, I feel like lots of people forget about what we actually have in Britain and go and travel and everything. And like, do you ever feel fully prepared for these challenges, or is that always a step into the unknown with stepping over that start line?
You never feel ready. I never feel like I can do it as planned. I think the thing I've learned is that I'm most prepared when I am expecting things to not go right. If I'm thinking, I think I've done everything, that is when you're going to be in trouble. You need to realize that so much is going to be out of the sight of your planning. And so the design element, you can do so much, and then you have to allow yourself to adapt. And I have a lot of lovely people come to me and say, I'm going to do a challenge. Can you give me some advice? And one of the pieces of advice I give is around expecting things to change. Whatever the plan you have, it probably won't be that. And you just have to be aware of it and mentally ready yourself.
Yeah. And having that adaptability, did that help you with obviously setting out to do this journey in 100 days and then having to mentally deal with running 28 days over target?
Yeah, that was, you know what, that was tough. And again, a good question. I didn't want to go over those 100 days. I wanted to do exactly double marathons every day, but I couldn't because of injuries. I had a flip meniscus in my knee. I had a broken tibia. I had to kind of get through these injuries. It was horrendous. But the reality of me finishing the trips with those kind of injuries and suffering that kind of stuff, it still felt like I was winning. So you have to reframe it, and being able to reframe it and stay positive is a real fundamental part of endurance. Otherwise, you can very easily go down a slippery slope. You know, when you realize that 100-day target is slipping and you think there's no way that I can carry on with a broken bone, I need to have a couple of days off. That was challenging. And yet the motivation was still there. And I think the true answer is you don't know if it's still going to be there. You just have to hope it is. And for me, it always has been. I've wanted it enough. Maybe one day I'll do something and I won't want it enough. But so far, I have.
Yeah. So would you say like the running the world mission was logistically the hardest, mentally the hardest, and as opposed to Run Britain being physically the hardest?
Yes, without a doubt. Good question. Britain was 100 times harder physically than the world. The world was, because it's over such a long period of time, you adapt, and human beings, we can take things in more slowly. You know, running for 12 hours a day and only having a few hours to yourself to eat and sleep and then do it again. There's no wriggle room. You know, there's absolutely, if I said to you, sit in a chair for 12 hours a day, have 3 hours sleep, get up, do it again. The physicality isn't the problem. It's the fact that you have no time to do anything else.
Yeah.
It's just, you have to keep doing that. And so that's why I'm very proud of that trip because it was so grueling mentally and physically, because I couldn't escape the fatigue. I was just constantly exhausted. Had I been a bit fitter, maybe I would have done the runs quicker, but maybe.
Yeah, and during that challenge, you did 11.5 million steps. So how did it feel taking that last step across the finish line?
Stepping over that finish line, that was in the Eden Project, St Austell, Cornwall, where we started, closing the loop. It was weird, actually, because we had 2 finish lines. Because I ran from the Eden Project. If anybody doesn't know the Eden Project, it's this indoor tropical greenhouse, if you like, of tropical plants from all over the world. And it's slightly inland. It's a couple of miles inland. So we started from there and then ran to the coast. So the moment that I got to the coast was kind of the new start line and therefore the immediate finish line. And so running along the beach to get to that end and seeing family and my partner at the time and the dog and people that I'd met all over the world that had then come over to support me to finish that, it was very special. And you realize, in the grand scheme of things, everybody in the world has their own stuff to care about. Nobody really cares about what you're doing at that point. But if you do, and I did, it feels wonderful. It feels like I set out to do that. It was unbelievably hard, and I still did it. And it gives me that, that shy little version of me as a boy. I go, you know what? I can do great things if I put my mind to it. And I still do now, and I still have that philosophy. And I'm very glad that that's been instilled in me. However, that's happened through my family, through my parents, through teachers, through guardians that have looked after me. They've given me the will to achieve things.
Yeah, and with that, obviously, you will have. What was the biggest obstacle that you encountered in that mission, as opposed to the dangerous obstacles you encountered with Run the World?
I think rather than talking about the broken bone, because obviously that's very challenging, I think I'll talk about the wind. The wind was horrible.
I can imagine, yeah.
The wind on the coast, when you're out on a walk somewhere, usually around Christmas time when it's cold and very windy, and you can't really hear yourself because it's so windy. And then imagine that for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then you're running into it, and it's raining, and it's cold. I went deaf for a few days because the wind, my brain just turned it off, turned the noise off. And apparently it's a thing, to the point that Andy, my very good friend who was supporting the trip, he was my driver and looked after me for the whole thing. It was a Brillo pad, like a washing up pad, and he cut it in half. Or I think we had 2, one on each ear, and then he taped these pads to my ears, and then put headphones over the top just to try and cut this noise out, because it was so torturous. Because you're so mentally and physically fatigued, the noise is then your brain is trying to interpret this noise all the time, and you just want it to switch off. So that's why I went deaf for a few days, because the brain said, you don't need to listen to this anymore. And I remember saying to Andy that, oh, it's not windy anymore, as in the wind noise has gone. Obviously I could feel the wind, but I couldn't hear it. And then of course it all came back, and I could hear again, and the wind was hell. But the Brillo pads didn't really work. But yeah.
Yeah, and if you were to pick between your Run Britain, your Run Italy, or your Run the World challenge, what would you say your favourite was?
It's got to be the world. It's got to be the world. The people, we've literally just launched my photo book. Obviously, I've got my written book back here somewhere. My big, large format photo book with all the photos in it. I took 500,000 photos, and I kind of whittled them down over the last few years, but gives you an idea of what it's like. I have to do that because of the people, the connections, the confidence, the media exposure. It gave me a platform, and the world ultimately changed me. And
over time, you've raised £3.2 million for charity.
Yeah.
So can you comprehend how much help that has been able to provide? And is that purpose a really important part of your endurance to carry on, to take that next step, to do that next marathon?
Yeah, it is. I think we all have a responsibility. I have a very clear philosophy that I get on my high horse about and preach, is that we are all so lucky. We have a responsibility to live by Kev's counsel, do what we love to do. Don't just spend your time festering away in an office trying to earn money so you can retire and then ultimately die. Do it now. Like, I really, really have that philosophy. And part of that philosophy is about helping the world that we are in collectively as a species. We should be looking after each other. So I set the charity up, my charity, the 196 Foundation. I set that up having finished the world trip, and I'm immensely proud of it. We ask for donations of £1.96 per month, hence the number 196, and it's been going very well. So anybody that's listening to this can afford £2 a month, under £2 a month, £1.96 a month. We put all of the money into the central pot, and then every year we ask you, the donor, anybody that donates, to vote on what project we support. And it can be any project anywhere in the world. We just have to put 3 options to the vote and you select one. So we call it this democratic donorship. And the best thing about it is that tiny amounts of money add up to a lot of money. And we have a private matcher who matches our funds as well. So I'm immensely proud that we do that. We've turned 40 acres of land into a farm, and that farm has fed children, and the farm has sold produce in order to be able to build a school in Kenya. We've done projects in Nepal, we've done projects with the mental health charities in the UK. The list goes on. We're in year 5 of the 4 or 5 of the charity now, and we have more and more donors. If you can afford a couple of quid a month, please donate. It's entirely non-profit. I don't get any money. Nobody in the team gets any money. We're all volunteers. It is just for the causes that we want to help. And hopefully that's my way of giving back.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And what work goes with running a charity? Because not many people know what that's like.
Yeah, running a charity is I'm going to have a brilliant CEO, Poppy. She manages the charity for me. And the challenge with the charity is that we require a lot from people. We require people to donate. We require them to share our story. And the reality is that all we can give back is to tell the story of what we do, because we can't give money back, because that's not the deal. You have to give us the money. So it's almost like an opposite of a normal business. And yet you have to run it financially as a business, because it has to sustain itself. And it, instead of paying employees, everybody's getting nothing because it's voluntary. And so the most challenging part is finding time to work on the charity, because you have to earn your money to live. Everybody does. And so that's, I'm surrounded by good people. I have my very good friend Nick, who's the chairman. We have a great board. We have Annabelle, who does all of the accounts, and we've just got some really, really wonderful people involved. So I tell you, the answer is running a charity is probably one of the best things you can do.
Yeah, and you also have your own company, Run Weekends, which hosts running retreats. So what inspired you to do that, and how is running that like?
Yes, what inspired me to do Run Weekends? Run Weekends is ultimately, it's a combination of everything I've achieved so far with running around the world, meeting a load of brilliant people, then having people say to me, well, Nick, you've been everywhere. Where should I go on holiday? Where should I go running? And then ultimately I realized that there was this big gap in the market where people enjoyed running races, but there really wasn't much of an availability to just go and run as part of a group and a holiday. You have surf camps, yoga camps. Why can't you have a run camp where you can just go and enjoy a good run? So running the business is wonderful. It takes up all of my time. It is excellent. We've got 50 destinations around the world, and a brilliant crew, about 65 people, about a core team of about 10, 11, and they're wonderful people that love running, and they understand the ethos. Anybody can turn up. It's all abilities. It is for the kind of people that maybe have done a lot of racing, or maybe haven't done much running at all, but they just love to travel and use running as a good excuse. And they get together, have good food, and we run some amazing places. And we look after everyone. We're all very focused on the safety element as well as having fun. So I'm really proud of it. Some of these places are far flung. Whether it's kind of swimming with whales or it's being in the middle of the desert. We go to some pretty epic places.
Yeah, and as opposed to your running in 2025, you did a bit of a different challenge compared with your previous, with going on the BBC travel game Destination X. So how would you describe your experience on that show, and what was the process of getting on it?
Yeah, good point. Getting on the show, I mean, they came to me and said, "Do you fancy this?" And I said, "Well, what is it?" And they said, "We can't tell you. It's a reality show. Can't tell you what it's about. But if you want to do it, then tell us." And then there was a long process. You have to kind of have various different things go on. Psychologists, kind of people, the production company come to your house and make sure that you're a suitable person for the show, and they look after you and give you the general gist of how long you're going to be away for. Etc. No contact, or minimal contact once a week with family and friends. And I thought, yeah, let's, just like I said to you earlier, say yes to things. If you get offered to do stuff, then say yes. It'll open some doors. It will be good fun. And therefore, yeah, the challenge went ahead. And for anybody that doesn't know, Destination X is about 13 of us on a blacked out bus traveling around Europe, essentially in a real life kind of moving Big Brother. Where you get filmed constantly and you have to play games to win clues, and those clues tell you where you are. And every episode, Rob Brydon, the host, will eliminate one of us when we are furthest away from where we think we are. So we place an X on a map, and if we place that X furthest away, we get eliminated. So that was it was a challenge to be on that bus. It was a long time filming, and it was different from my normal life.
Yeah. So did you not know what the show was until you turned up on the day, or did you get told
Right. Yeah, you know a little bit. We were told that it was a cross between Traitors and Race Across the World, and that we would be having to find where we were, but that was it.
Wow.
And so then
It's very vague.
Yeah, purposely vague, so we can't leak anything to the media. Yeah, so it was very interesting, the whole process. I mean, seeing behind the screen, the curtain, so to speak, with production, that was the most fascinating part.
Yeah, so what was that like behind the scenes element, and what was life on the bus like, and sleeping on the bus, and that whole experience?
Sleeping on the bus. Yeah, sleeping on the bus was fine. I mean, I lived in a van, so that was okay.
Yeah.
Being on a blacked out bus while it was moving, everybody assumes you can get quite travel sick, but there's no travel sickness, certainly not on my part. It felt fine. It's a big bus. And periodically, obviously, those windows would go transparent so you could see them, and then back to opaque.
Yeah.
I think it was the weird element that everybody was put together for a long period of time, weeks and weeks and weeks of filming, and you are getting more tired, you are getting more frustrated, you're also getting closer to the prize of £100,000, and so it's more stressful. You have to be really on the ball, you have to pick up on little clues, and then everybody tries to go after everybody and stabs each other in the back, which is difficult. But you also have to remember, and halfway through I realised that, we're not really winning £100,000. We are entertaining. We are there to entertain the public. So once I understood that, I think I kind of enjoyed it a bit more.
Yeah, what was your favourite moment from that series?
I think the favourite moment was when there was a wine challenge in the. Do you remember the wine challenge?
Was it the one where you had to balance stuff?
Yeah, where you had to balance a load of wine glasses with wine in, or what was supposed to be wine, in a vineyard, and if you got questions wrong, or people could nominate you to have lots of glasses, and they all ganged up on me and put my glasses on my tray, and amazingly I managed to balance them for a while, quite a lot of them. I think I had 14 glasses. So that felt quite good because it was against all odds. I managed to balance it just for a few minutes, a few seconds, which was quite good fun.
Yeah, and what was that experience like watching yourself on the series? Because I'm guessing it was quite like a new experience for you because you actually got to see somewhat the route that you were driving, where you were.
Yeah, it was very different. Yeah, because everybody that sees
and the clues that you missed as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. All the clues we missed. That was frustrating. The reality was, when you film it, you don't see anything because obviously you're in the game. And then when you watch it back on the telly, they show you all the establishing shots, and you can then, it looks quite enjoyable. It looks quite fun. I was watching it back, and I was watching it like it was just a TV show, forgetting, kind of removing myself. I was forgetting that I was watching myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just looking at a character version of myself. It was very strange. And then obviously you realize, oh yeah, we did that bit, or you're pointing out to family and friends, you're saying, oh yeah, well that bit, it only looks like it's 10 minutes on the show, but actually it took like 5 hours to do that, or so there is good little bit behind the scenes knowledge.
Yeah, and like, did you ever think of the thought of like 4 million people seeing you, watching you every single week in their living rooms? Like, I suppose that's not an experience that you have got before.
You know what? I didn't really worry about that. I mean, I've done bits of press before, and obviously the whole reason I did the show wasn't to win the money; it was to get the exposure. So therefore, you want that. I don't mind people watching me on the bus. It can be quite entertaining, I suppose. What was weird is what came afterwards, which was when all of a sudden loads of people recognize you, and you go from people recognizing you for running to then people recognizing you for running and or the telly. And when people approach you, you don't know whether they know you from the telly or whether they know you from all of the running. So that was a bit interesting.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. Like, from my point of view, I watched the show and then looking into you and seeing all of the things that you've done and being like amazed by this person that was on Destination X is the only man who's run a marathon across the world.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I suppose it was a good exercise of. It's a good question because everybody on the bus was so different. They all have their own stories. I have my story. I was unique in the sense that lots of the people on the bus were taking a lovely 5 weeks, 4.5, 5 weeks off work and having a jolly. Whereas for me, I was used to traveling a lot. So actually, I think I'd been to every single place that we were exactly until the one place where I didn't know. So at least I was consistent with that, I suppose.
And you've touched on before that you wrote 2 books about running the world and Run Britain. So how was that experience and how did that happen? And what was it like seeing your book on a shelf for the first time?
Yeah, having the books I've got 5 or 6 books now. Actually, we've got loads of different books that we've done with various different types of book. But the main ones are Run Britain and Running the World, and seeing that on the shelves, and going into an airport or going to a Waterstones and seeing your book when you've decided to do a trip, you've then decided to plan the trip, you've then decided to run the trip, and then you've got to write about it, and then it's published on the shelf. There's a long period of time. It's not just write a book about a trip and then it's on the shelf. You have to go through this long process, and that long process means that it's somewhat diluted. It's not like wow, it's really exciting. It's diluted because of the time passing. That said, I'm immensely proud of the books, mostly because of my dyslexia and struggling. And actually, I believe I'm quite a good writer now, and I really enjoy it, and it's very therapeutic. So there's more books to come.
Oh, great. And it's like, what impact do you think all of these challenges have had on your mental health? How do you keep your mental health good? And what impact has it had on your personal life as well?
Yeah, mental health wise, I think many people suffer with depression. I have. Suffering with depression is tough, and having running as the core gives me this armor, gives me this tool to be able to combat it. And I would say anybody that's listening to this, run. Go and run. It will change your life. It's had a huge, profound, positive effect on me. In terms of my personal life, because of the business, because of the minor celebrity status in the running community, very minor, you end up meeting lots of lovely people. And if anything, your network becomes so big that the world feels smaller. So net result, the whole concept of me running around the world has just changed my life for the better.
Yeah, and we'll do some quick fire sort of questions to
Okay.
end off the episode.
Sure.
So what does with balancing all of the things that you do, what does an average life, average week, an average day in your life look like?
Average week and every day. So I'm usually up about 6 o'clock in the morning. I usually go to bed about 11 p.m. Most days there's a run. Most days there's a time with the dogs. Most days I am working behind the laptop relentlessly. This is a weird one. Most people don't realize that there's a hell of a lot of laptop time, because I have a business, I have a charity, and I have my own brand. So there's a lot of laptop time, a lot of phone calls. I have at least 10 calls a day with people, with sponsors, with trips, with marathons, with charities, etc., etc. So it's a lot of admin, and as much time outside as possible. And I'm very rarely at home. I'm actually at home now for a few days. I'm actually leaving tonight. So that gives you an idea that I am away most of the time. That's the short answer.
So what has been the highest point in your career?
Highest point in my career, finishing running the world.
What has the lowest point in your career been?
Being mugged at gunpoint.
What's one hobby you're passionate about that would surprise people?
Formula One or snooker.
Oh, okay. Snooker. Wow. What is your favourite thing about your job?
Freedom. Easy answer.
What's your least favourite?
Least favourite thing about the job. It takes time away from my home life.
Okay. Yeah. And what's are your plans for the future?
Future plans, I have one big one, which is I would like to break the record for the most consecutive marathons. So I have a trip planned where I'm going to run 1,000 marathons in 1,000 days, which is nearly 4 times the current record. So 3 years of back-to-backs.
Oh, wow. And I suppose, what is that the closest thing you've done is Run Britain?
Yes.
Would that be? Okay, wow.
So
and that was what, 200 marathons?
That was 200, yeah. So we're going to go. The difference being is only one a day. So
okay, yeah.
Essentially doing Italy back to back 10 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm going to do all over the world. Have chunks of time, like 5 or 8 months in different places. Raise loads of money for charity. 3-year mission. Been in the pipeline for a long time, so that will come soon.
Wow. So is that the next dream you're chasing, would you say?
I reckon the next dream I'm chasing is to make Run Weekends the business so successful that it gets bought and that all of the effort has gone into making a really positive change to the world. And it's different from the charity, because the charity, I hope, is going to be my retirement. It's going to be the thing that I work on forever.
Yeah.
And the business, I hope to be able to make it a huge success and sell it and close the door and be proud of it that we've delivered it. It kind of feels like it needs to be delivered, if that makes sense. Like the mission needs to come to close.
Yeah, that sounds... and what advice would you give to someone who wants to run marathons, potentially even ultra marathons?
My advice is consistency. Consistency is the most important thing, and often that means that you have to have motivation, but I think the most important thing above motivation is discipline. if you can give yourself discipline in your life, then you don't need the motivation, because even when you're not motivated, the discipline will kick in. That's the most important part. So some days when you don't feel motivated, that's a normal human being trait. It's a human being trait. It means that you can go out and run because you have the discipline to. You don't necessarily need to be motivated.
And what's one like practical piece of advice would you say to it, whether it is about running, sport, or just daily life, like to give people discipline to do the things that they want to do with their lives?
Write a diary. Most easy answer, write a diary at the end of every day and go to bed answering yourself one question. Was I proud of the day? And if not, change it for the next day.
Yeah, that's some great advice there. And then finally, what advice would you give to someone who is wanting to chase their dream?
Wanting to chase their dream, be unrelenting. Be unrelenting, knock on doors, don't take no for an answer. Don't wait for anything. Definitely don't wait for anything. Go and knock down those blockers when they happen. If you can't go over, go under. If you can't go through, go around. Find a way. And I suppose that comes coupled with your network. Definitely look after your network. Give value to those around you and they will give it back.
That's some great advice there. Thank you for coming on today, Nick.
Thank you very much for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed my interview with Nick. The links to his socials, his books and companies are in the description. I will be back with another interview next month, but for now, goodbye.